Good morning, everybody. It's another episode of the Keep Going podcast, Athlete Shining a Light on Mental Health. I got Ellie McDougall here. Super excited to get some women's soccer representation on the pod this morning. Ellie, what's going on, girl?
Hi, Pat. How you doing? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And I always appreciate it. Anytime I can shout out CNC and BNC for kind of setting this up. We love our women's soccer community. We've had awesome female leaders and athletes on here. And I know, obviously, with your background, that you'll follow suit today. So I'm excited about it.
Oh yeah, I'm not here where I am without them. So they're the best people, hands down, some of my favorite people in the world. So this connection, knew I had to do it.
I love it. Well, I appreciate you. And it just says a lot about you for jumping in last second. So thank you for doing that. What I do want to do is I want to kind of unpack some things first. First and foremost, we are a mental health podcast. Why did you feel like, hey, Sunday morning, I want to jump out with the boys today?
Yeah, I think it's such an important topic. I think no one is immune to mental health struggles. And I think myself, I want to learn as much as I can about it. I want to advocate for much as I can about it. I think, my players kind of I hear about mental health on a daily basis from really small to really big. So the more I can advocate for it, the more I can learn about it and have conversations about it, I think the better, because I think it's a topic that is going to need to be talked about forever. So.
No doubt. No doubt. And obviously, as a current college coach, we'll go into that. But my big thing is, what are you seeing, right? You mentioned that already. Like your players are going through this. What are you seeing in 2025 in women's soccer? What's going on in the mental health world?
Yeah, I think it's mental health is different for every person. It's an individual thing, right? Every single person has a different thing going on with the overarching theme that, everyone has something. But I think for me, it's treating each player as an individual. I think when I was in college, it was a little bit more of a blanket,
Agreed. Agreed.
treatment.
Same with me. Yep.
So I think for me, it's really just you have to take that individual approach with every player and treat them as an individual and who they are, because they deal and react with things different ways. So that's a learning curve, but I think that's a theme for sure, is trying to make it as individual as possible and helping out each player with what they may need.
No, love that. And when you see something going on, right? Obviously, you've been trained, you have staff members that talk about it. When you see something not right, what is your go-to? Like, what do you do? I know it's different for everybody, but like, where do you start when you see that? Because I have athletes out here in Chicago that were trying to address it. Everybody's different, but where do you start?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think over the years I've learned a lot more about that. Something I took from Bree,
Love it.
BNC.
Shout out BNC.
Yeah,
Shout
yeah,
out
yeah.
Bree.
I meet with my players on an individual basis
I
every
love
two
that.
weeks.
I love
So
that.
during the season, so they meet with me from preseason to the end of season like 6 times. So much that
Amazing.
they're probably sick of me. But in those meetings, I ask, the first question I ask is about academics. The second question is about soccer, and then the latter part of the conversation is how you doing. And so in those moments, most of them are like, I'm good, cool. And then, after maybe the third, fourth meeting, you can kind of break into the shell and they kind of start sharing. So I think giving individual time and kind of, if you see something a little bit, in practice, if someone's personality is a little bit different or someone's mood, maybe in those individual meetings where it's not a whole group and they've gotten to know you a little bit. Once that trust and relationship is kind of established, you can kind of start to dig a little deeper. But I've learned a lot in those individual meetings. They take time, but that's something that Bree taught me, and I think it's super, super useful for getting to know your players and really kind of getting to a deeper level.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of players, a lot of college coaches that listen to the podcast. So I'll kind of speak to them a lot of the time. And college coaches, if you're listening today, like that is amazing. Like that's how it should be. It should be person over player. It
Mhm.
should be getting to unlayer these student athletes because there's so
Yeah,
much going on. And I like what you said. It could take 3, 4, 5 different meetings to finally get
yeah,
a legitimate, how are you?
yeah,
A legitimate, okay, this is what I'm feeling. This is
yeah,
it's earned because
yep,
what you say about coaching and your players, like it's earned. You have to show them
yeah,
you love and care about them to get
yeah,
those authentic answers. And then
yeah.
for players, if your school is not doing this, get involved and ask. Like
Mm.
just ask. Like, hey, coach, I'm feeling this way, or coach, I want to talk this out. Have those one-on-ones. Would you encourage your players to talk about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, yes. I I tell my players, I don't know something if you don't ask, or if you don't, I can't
Mhm.
help you if you don't ask, right?
Right.
That applies to everything. That's school, soccer, right? Like if you're not understanding something, or if, hey, you're not feeling great, come up to me and tell me, and how can we help navigate this situation? So yeah, I'm a huge believer. I'm like, I'm here. The door's always open. I encourage you to use it, right? Like I tell that in my team meeting, I say this: my door is open. I encourage you to use it. So yeah, that's definitely a practice that we use for sure.
No doubt. And we had JUCO head assistant coach and recruiting coordinator DJ Johnson on last week, and he talked about that open door policy. Do you feel like you kind of instill that at Suffolk now? Like if they got to talk, you can just come on in, kind of deal.
Yeah, I think it's easier with certain players, right? The older they get, the more confident and comfortable they feel. I've noticed that, at least same here with over the 4 years. And like I said before, it might take one, two, three, four meetings. For some players, it might take a year for them to kind of really take that initiative. But yeah, the longer I've been here, the more kids I've started to see come in, even just like hanging out, where it's to the
I
point where
love that.
you got to get out. Like I have to do some
Yes.
work, but it's a good problem to have. But yes, I do find them come in. Hey, can I pick your brain really quick? Which for me is one of the favorite parts of the job.
Yeah.
I enjoy that part. So
No, for sure. And I know you talked about the kids, obviously. Talk about when you were a kid going through this. Like, when did you decide, okay, it's going to be soccer for me? Like, when did you know you kind of had what it takes to be a player to coach?
yeah, I think we were a sports household. I grew up
Oh, yeah. I
from
could tell. I could tell
yeah.
right away.
We grew
Yeah.
up, I think I was like from a young age. My mom was she's a huge Bills fan. Shout out Bills, they're playing today.
Are you a Bills fan as well?
I'm a Giants fan young at heart, but New York strong, so I will root
Fair,
for the
fair. So
Bills
we're
if
cheering for Buffalo today. Okay.
yes,
Got
but
it.
um yeah, it's ESPN was always on in my household at a young age. My
Yeah.
brother was obsessed, and he's 4 years older than me, which means I became obsessed.
Right.
It was always basketball and soccer were my two loves, but
Yeah.
I'm 5'6", and so I never really the basketball gene just never really stuck. But
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me
yeah,
too.
and then my brother played in college, and I just had to do everything my brother did. And
Yeah.
so I kind of specialized a little bit in soccer in 8th grade, I'd say. So just at the tail end of middle school, and then just stuck with club and high school soccer. Played basketball, but I knew I was a little bit better at soccer, and I wanted to do that. And so that's how I ended up. I just followed in my brother's footstep, played the same position, went to college, and never looked back. So, oh yeah.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Amazing. And I always talk about this podcast. Your face changed when you started talking about your brother
Yeah.
in a good way.
Yeah.
Talk about him, 4 years older.
Hmm.
Did he push you pretty hard?
Oh my God. He couldn't tell me anything without me pushing back.
I
It was
love it.
that type.
Yeah.
He was so much more athletic. So, like, when I was younger, I used to think that my copying him was out of spite. Like, I'm going to show
Yeah.
you. But I think it was
Hmm.
now that I'm older and wiser, it was definitely out of admiration.
Oh yeah.
He was gifted athletically that my family just wasn't. He could jump through the roof. He could run fast. He could run for days. Tall, skinny, fast. And so anything he did, I just had to do. And it's funny. He's also a college soccer coach at the D2 level. So we're doing.
Where is he coaching now?
He's at Shepherd University. So
Shepherd. Yeah, got it.
yeah,
Mhm.
uh-huh. And he's doing great things with that program. And
Amazing.
so super proud of him. I don't tell him that enough. But yeah, definitely had to follow in his footsteps, and we're still to this day kind of competing, which is kind of fun. But
That's amazing. It's
yeah,
a lot better when you have people in your world and your circle
yeah,
that have similar goals and aspirations and sometimes aren't going to sugarcoat it. And I
yeah.
think a lot of times, and we talked about this last week, it's like sometimes people feel, okay, I'm struggling, my mental health sucks. Like
Mhm.
if you're not doing anything to get better, your routines, your rituals, coping with things, like it
Right.
can't be just, okay, life is hard. Like everybody has stuff that they're going through. I'm
Mhm.
glad that your brother was there to kind of push you, which is
Yeah,
inspiring, honestly. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, I would say this too. I mean, you realize at a young age, okay, I'm going to be an athlete. How about coaching wise? Like, And I
Hmm.
don't ask the how old are you question. I'm not going to do that. But like, you're going your fourth year as a college coach now, correct? Fourth year.
Yeah, head coach. Yep.
Yeah. Talk about when you knew, okay, I want to make that leap because the leap from
Yeah.
assistant to head coach is a big one. Talk about that for you.
Yeah, I'll touch on both. I think there wasn't like an aha moment, but there was a little bit. I was always the rah, energetic team player. I
Yeah.
loved being part of a team. My
Hmm.
best friends to this day are all former teammates. Like that was,
Yes.
I loved it. There was nothing beats that. I still kind of can't. Once you leave it, you can never really replicate it.
You got it. Yep.
So
Hmm.
I always knew sports were going to be part of my life because I just crave that team camaraderie. And then my senior year, so I was fortunate enough to start my first 4 years of my college career. I was a goalkeeper. I started 4 years or 3 years of my college career, but they weren't the 3 years that everyone thinks. They weren't like sophomore, junior, senior. It was my freshman, sophomore, junior. And then a goalkeeper who was a year younger than me, super athletic. My coach made the tough decision to switch. So I was a
Yeah.
captain my senior year, benched. And so
Wow. I didn't
yeah,
know that. I didn't know that.
I had to choose. I had to choose a path. Do I be really, really miserable and sulk and kind of be like, no, this isn't right? Because I thought I worked just as hard as she did.
I mean, you're a
And
three-year starter. Yeah, that makes
yeah, and so
sense.
so there was a lot of like, which direction, or do I go the direction where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna be the best teammate I possibly can. That way, if the roles are reversed, she would do the same. And so I took that path. It was sometimes not as easy, right? You want to say, hey, this isn't fair, but in that moment on the sidelines, I watched a lot of soccer that year,
Oh yeah.
and I enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed being the support. I enjoyed being the not that I would have loved to be on the field, but I think I from that angle I was a little I recognized what I could there was still something I could do. Which and an impact I could have. So that's a little bit about kind of how I can and continued on the journey. And then the next year I graduated from my undergrad and jumped right into my coach asked me to be a graduate assistant, and that's kind of how I was like, yeah, sure, I had fun, so let's do it again.
That is extremely strong. And we've done this for 100 episodes. I've never heard that happen. I've never heard of a 3-year starter then not playing as a senior as a captain.
Yeah,
And I have to ask you kind of more straight up because there's athletes like that will listen to this and go, wait,
yeah,
what?
yeah,
How did you get through that? Like, what was like the big thing for you? Like,
yeah,
besides, okay, being team first, being rah
yeah,
rah, supporting, like,
yeah,
when did it kind of click that, okay, I got to kind of flip the switch here?
yeah. When I figured out I did everything I possibly could. So one of my biggest issues was fitness. So I, as a goalkeeper, that was kind of one of a common theme, but for me, it was a 4 year struggle. I came in as fit as I ever was, in terms of myself and a measurement of myself, and I was extremely happy passing fitness tests, doing all the right things. Um, and then when I was kind of told the spring prior that that was going to be the trend, that I might be not starting because she had a better spring. And one of the big reasons was my fitness. So I came back as fit as I possibly was, but she was still a little bit more athletic. She could jump.
She's a good player. She's a good
She
player.
was a good
Yeah.
player. And
Yeah.
so I don't fault my coach for it, but what made me a little bit more I was very proud of what I achieved to try to compete to get to that position. So I knew I was ready. I knew I worked the hardest I possibly could, and I left it all out there. And the coach went the other way, and what let me a little feel a little bit better about myself is there was things on that journey of me trying to get back my starting spot that I've never achieved before. And probably I'll never run a 14-minute mile again. That just won't happen.
No way.
Uh,
Just different times for me too, right?
Right. And so that for me I was like, okay, I did everything I could. I got to a position in my life where I was the fittest, and I was like, this is, if it's this decision and it doesn't go my way, it doesn't go my way. And so that's kind of how I stomached it. I knew I did everything I possibly could. So,
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head there at the end. You did everything you possibly could.
mhm.
And that was the outcome. I think a lot of athletes would have said, you know what? This is a heck of a run. coach is now doing me dirty. Coach is not
Yeah.
doing me right. This is not fair.
Yeah.
But instead, you decided, I'm going
Yeah.
to take the next step and I'm going to be team first. I'm not
Um,
going to let my personal values bleed onto the field in a negative light. And I think that's strong of you. And looking back at it, the way you spoke about the other goalkeeper,
yeah.
that also says a lot about you. Like you
Right.
admitted, okay, this is a good player. Whatever is best for the team, I'll kind of ride with it, which I
Yeah.
respect. And I know that's probably helped you in your coaching career to be able to
Mhm.
make those connections and make those, I shouldn't
Mhm.
say storytelling, but make those relationships authentic as well, for sure.
Yeah. Mhm.
Now, I love that. Okay, well, I got to talk about the girls now because if I have
Okay.
you on the podcast and don't talk about this year's team, I'm just
Yeah.
not doing anyone a disservice. So, talk about this year's team. How's your group of girls?
This year, this past fall, they were great. They was the most talented team we've had. And it's so funny. I mentioned this to them and I've mentioned this. You can be hopeful and disappointed at the same time. We
Yes.
had a really great statistical year defensively. So we were 7, 4, and 6. So that means we had 6 ties.
Yes.
So we had
A
six
lot of close
games.
games.
Yeah, that could have been wins. It was the least amount of losses that they've had in years. And we had less than a goal against average. We scored more than we ever did, but we were just so close on a couple of games that if we swayed, it's a different story. So yeah, the leadership has developed a lot to the point where I think we're stronger mentally for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We had a couple comeback wins this year. Um, you know, in years prior when we would go down, we would lose the game. That was the trend. But this year we went down 2, 3 times against teams, came back, won a game, tied. So the resiliency, the leadership from that senior class was there. A lot more girls are buying in to what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to do culturally and athletically. So I think it was a really fun year. I enjoyed it. I just, I think with the talent we had, we could have just if we just won a couple more games, I think it would have really, really been like a special wins year. But overall, happy with the direction that we're going for sure.
I'll say this too. 15 minutes in, I can tell that you want to go over the hump.
Yeah.
Like I can tell that like you're trying to get to that pinnacle and you're
Yeah.
trying to win the conference, win the national championship. I can tell you're motivated that way.
Yeah.
For you as a coach, what allows you to have that mindset? Cause it's strong. I can tell like through
Yeah.
Zoom that you have that mental performance, like set expectations. Talk about
Yeah.
that.
First and foremost, I think my support system's really great. So my wife is awesome. My wife
Yeah,
from
shout her out. Let me hear it.
Yeah,
Let me hear it.
my wife from day one. First of all, she's in the mental health world. She's a social work clinician, so she works.
Amazing. So you
Yeah,
come home to those conversations
yeah.
too.
Well, yeah. She was a D1 athlete herself, so she gets it. And from day one, she's been like showing up to my games. She's been super, super
Amazing.
supportive. So in terms of like me allowing to dream big, she's been a huge, huge part of that. And then my family is really supportive. They'll
Mhm.
come to games. They still come to games.
Amazing.
They're half the crowd sometimes. So it's a the support system that I have is and it's established is a huge, huge. If I don't have that, I don't think I have any belief. So that's number one. But then my coworkers are really great. I've got a mixture of young and really experienced coaches. The men's coach right next to me, Bill Maddock, he's a really great. He's been kind of like a mentor for a little bit. He's won the conference this year. He's done it, and so he's been a head coach for like 15 years. So it's great to learn. I've got young coaches that are excited and energetic. So I think it's a great environment, the athletic department I'm in, and with that coupled with my support system, it's like, why not dream big, go do it. So
I love it. Yeah,
yeah.
I love it. I haven't stopped smiling since we started because it's just you are so selfless. Everything you talk about is this person and that person
Yeah.
and this and just molding you into the person that you are, which I think 15 minutes in with the background I had, you're fantastic. Like it's
Oh,
awesome. Like I'm just honored to have someone like you on the podcast today. Like
I
it's
appreciate
amazing.
that, Pat.
I
Yeah.
mean that. It's amazing. And I can tell it's completely authentic. And I guess that prompts me to what I usually ask. And it usually comes a lot later in this conversation, but tell me your keep going moment. Like, was it that moment when you didn't play as a senior? What was something that went on that you shouldn't have got through that you got to the other side of?
Yeah, I think that's a big keep going moment for me. it's a story I keep telling, so it must
Be
have some
very
sort of,
monumental.
right? I
Yeah.
didn't think it was that monumental, but I find myself keep pulling pieces from it. It depends
Yeah.
on, I'm like, oh yeah, I learned that during that. I learned that during that. And
Hmm.
so I think for me, it's times in adversity where you kind of figure out like, hey, how'd you handle it? And did you handle it the right way? And did I handle it perfectly? Absolutely not. Were there moments where I was like, I should be playing? Yeah, yes. But overall, I think I look back at that moment and it was two forks in the road. And it's like, you could have gone this way or you could have gone this way. And I don't know if I continued coaching if I didn't like sit back and like enjoy it and try to get a positive outlook on it. And I definitely can't have conversations with my players. Like I have to tell players, hey, I think she's gonna play today and you're not. And so I think having that experience and being and living through it and being the one on the other side of it, I know it helps. So yeah, I think that was a lot of a good just a good fork in the road that kind of has pushed me, even though it's 10 years ago. So it's kind
Yeah.
of, but
I That's amazing. I think on this podcast, I don't think I've ever said this like this, but I think it benefits you sometimes when crap hits the fan as a player.
oh yeah.
Like when it's not perfect all the time.
Hmm.
You have those coaches that play high level soccer, right?
Yeah.
Olympians or Division 1 players or coaches, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm a baseball guy by trade. So
Yeah.
you have those coaches that are fantastic, right? MLB players and big time coaches and big time players, and they failed, but like it's a lot. You hear a lot about the good, right?
Yeah.
I think you can learn a lot from players and coaches that have gone through the crap. They've gone through the adversity. Like, I don't
Oh yeah.
know. It makes it very, I keep going back to authentic, but it goes back to the vulnerability piece of being like,
Yeah.
hey, ladies, I
Yeah.
got benched as a senior
Yeah.
and didn't get to play.
Oh
I
yeah.
talk about it as a player. I committed to a nationally ranked JUCO out of high school. I
Hmm.
played in 12 out of 52 games and transferred.
Hmm.
Like, it's easy to tell my players when they're failing, hey, like,
Yeah.
I've been in your shoes and now I get paid to do this. So like, I think it's
Yeah.
just that understanding and that vulnerability piece of you're not alone in the failure aspect. Would you agree with that?
Oh, huge. I think the failures lead you to your success. I think I say this all the time to players, adversity is your biggest superpower. It's
Yeah.
your biggest superpower. And it's like I heard that quote. I can't I wish I could give credit to the right person. But I that's not my quote, so I'm not gonna take credit for it. But it's a quote I talk about all the time. It's like adverse, hey, if you're down in this moment or you're having a bad moment, like this is going to make you better. Maybe not tomorrow, you're not gonna realize it or the
Right.
year, but in 10 years down the road, you're gonna be like, oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this is
Mm-hmm.
why I act like this. I know how to deal with this because of it's your biggest superpower. And so I
Yeah.
think if going through that, it actually gives you an edge, right?
Yes.
Like you've gone through it, you know how to deal with it. Just as you know, it's a huge, I think it's an advantage. There's nobody at the top of their game that wasn't at the lowest of lows at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something in that. There's something.
Yes.
So
I agree. There's definitely a roadmap for athletes there with that vulnerability and just understanding, okay, failure's feedback. The
yeah.
adversity, it's tough. It's tough, but you'll get through it. And sometimes it give you that look like, what would you know, lady? Or like,
Yeah.
what would you know? But like, it's
Yep.
just, you have to, and we talked about it earlier, you have to establish that relationship and,
Yeah.
discipline one, but love twice is hard early on. So they trust your feedback, right?
Right.
So I think that's big.
Yeah.
Let's do this. I do want to get you back to your Sunday. I appreciate all the time so
Oh,
far,
dude.
but I do want to do rapid fire questions real quick if that's cool with
Okay.
you.
Oh boy. Yep.
You ready?
Yep.
Let's do it. Someone that inspires you. Go.
Oh my God. Bree.
All right. Tell me why.
Bree, because she opened my eyes as to what a program could be. So, and how you should be as a coach, and that you can do both. You can be vulnerable and you can be open and you can also win. She's the winningest coach that RPI has ever had. So
Shout
I
them
think
out.
you can
Shout
do
them
both.
out. Go
Yes.
RPI. I donated to their fundraiser. People forget that. Go ahead.
Nice.
Shame. I have to. I love her and I love that school. Go ahead.
Yeah. So to say that again?
Oh, I just said I love that
Yeah.
school and I
Yeah.
love her and I love their family. I talk about when
Yeah.
my fiance met Bree and Christy for the first time.
Mhm.
They made us lunch and snacks and we
Yeah.
watched football. And you would think
Mhm.
I've known Bree for years, like I've known Christy. It's
Yeah.
just great people. And look,
Yeah.
now we're doing this today, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
I love that. Favorite place, you're a head coach, obviously. Favorite place to eat on the road after a big win.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm a bully.
I'm gonna go off of what my players say. If I'm feeling really nice, it's Chipotle. It's
Chipotle.
Chipotle. Yeah,
Chipotle.
Chipotle.
Got it.
I'll do
Is
Chipotle.
there a $10 limit or you got them go crazy or what?
I had to after the
I
first time
I've
we
been there.
went.
You forget
I
I've
was
been
like,
there.
we took advantage and so I have smartened up and put on like in Boston it's a little bit more, maybe like a
Uh-huh.
$50 limit. But
Hmm.
we have now have a limit.
I get it. It was the same way in Chicago. I
Yeah.
remember those days.
Yeah, yeah.
Third thing I got here. In the mental health world,
Mhm.
this stuff is so much more prominent now, which is
Yeah.
is good. It's out in the media. People are talking about it.
Yeah.
If there's an athlete struggling right now listening this morning and wants to hear from you, Al, what would you
Mhm.
tell them?
Um, it's not the end. No feeling is final. Whether it's the worst feeling in the world or the best feeling in the world, it will end. And you can keep moving forward, and your adversity in this moment is going to be someday your biggest superpower. So,
Oh man,
yeah.
that is gold. I talk about this pod all the time. Like I know what I'm clipping on Monday and Tuesday to throw on Instagram and stuff like that. That is incredible stuff. And it's adversity is your biggest superpower, correct? That's the quote.
Yeah. It's not mine. If I maybe I can text you who it came from, but adversity is your
Uh,
biggest superpower. So
I found our episode title. That's for
nice.
sure. I
Well,
absolutely love it. This is the last thing. I kind of got to give you your flowers moment on here. Like this has been such a great interview today. Like I really appreciate you jumping on. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on? Anybody else you wanted to shout out that I might have missed today?
no, no, I think um nobody I miss. I'll say my wife. She's just awesome. When I need my mental health moment, I come back and she lets me have it, although she heard people's mental health stuff all the time. So like I said, just my support system is great, and I don't get where I am today without my family, my wife, my friends. Like that's get your circle close, get them tight, and I think when you have that, you can get through anything. So
Amazing. And that is a fantastic send off for today's interview. I just appreciate you taking the time. I
yeah,
know it
Pat.
was last second. I know you're busy. I know the college coach grind. I get it. I'm just super grateful we got to share some knowledge and wisdom today. So thank you so much for being you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you, Pat. It's awesome what you're doing here. I think keep doing it. This is so cool. And I was more than happy to come on.
Well, I'm gonna hold you to it. Like once you guys win the whole damn thing, you're gonna have to come back on, okay?
I'll let you know. I'll let you
Okay,
know.
I got it. Well, you got a fan in us. If you guys ever do fundraising or any of that stuff, let me know. I'd love to help
Okay.
you guys out. And
Yeah.
above all else, keep going. Okay.
All right, Pat. Have a good one.
All right. You as well. Bye bye.